Good afternoon, brethren. I want to welcome and thank everyone for tuning in and joining us from the various locations from around the world for the broadcast of today's Sabbath message. Today's message will be delivered by David J. Smith, and it is titled, History That Must Be Told. And I'm your host today, Tim West. This is message number 1337D. David J. first delivered this message on August 18th, 2008. Well, I'm not sure how many of you caught that, but the date on part 3 from last week's broadcast was December 1st, 2007. Part 4, which we'll be enjoying today, has the date of August 18th, 2007. I think somebody mixed up the dates or something when they made these DVDs. How could you possibly have part 4 3.5 months before part 3? Anyway, for those of you who have decided to wait until after the equinox to look for the new moon to begin the new year, tonight at sunset through tomorrow night sunset is the last day of unleavened bread for you. And it is also a high day. So you have a double Sabbath this weekend. Now, I read an article from April 5th of this year titled, The Religion Named Artificial Intelligence. And we'll go into that right after today's message, which is about to begin here momentarily. So grab something to sip on, some lunch, or your favorite snack. Find a comfortable place to relax and enjoy today's message.
God has been very good to us. He has let us understand things that much of the rest of the churches in America and around the world will not look into, and therefore they have no comprehension as to what is about to occur on the world scene. Revelation 13 reveals the rise of an end-time world government. In order for the government to rise, there must be individuals behind the scenes plotting the overthrow of government in preparation to bring them all into one political unit, one religious unit, one economic unit, and of course, they'll do it by the military. According to a man by the name of Robert Goldsborough of the Washington Dateline, former President George W. Bush, or governor at that time, from Texas, had a secret that most people did not know about when he decided that he would run for the presidency in 2001. That secret was that he was a member of a secret society even more secretive than Freemasonry. The society goes by the unofficial names of Skull and Bones or the Order, and its members sometimes are referred to as bonesmen. The Order of the Skull and Bones was founded at Yale University in 1833. Membership in it is a Bush family tradition. Then in 2001, Governor Bush, as he was running for the presidency, was inducted into Skull and Bones way back in 1968. His father, President George Herbert Walker Bush, former president, was initiated into the order in 1948. His grandfather, Prescott S. Bush, who happened to be a senator, served in the Senate. He was inducted into the order in 1917. Now, once again, this is bad news for America, and it has been the entire time that President George W. Bush has been in the presidency, because he was a member and still is in good standing of the Order of the Skull and Bones. This order is pure Illuminati. Its origins can be traced back to Germany, through Hitler and the Thule Society, directly back to Bavaria, Germany, Adam Weishaupt, May 1st, 1776. And so it is that this society that he belongs to is anti-Christian in all of its policies. And if you think that former President Bill Clinton, who was a clown on the world scene for all the things that he did, that it was great to get rid of him, we have seen over the last few years, since 2001, when George W. Bush took office, that we could not even have begun to believe what he has done to America. His advances toward the New World Order have been very dramatic. His father took us toward the New World Order, mentioning it 210 times when he was president. And so it is, President Bush is following in his footsteps. But not only that, Bill Clinton, in a film clip that we have, stated that every president since Truman, Democrat or Republican, has been working for a new world order. Every president.
We had a worldview, Republican and Democratic presidents alike, from Harry Truman to George Bush. And after 1989, President Bush said, and it was a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order.
So what does that tell America? It tells us that we're in trouble right now, and most people are asleep and don't even know it. Generally, when the Illuminati wants to advance programs internally within the United States that will affect the American society to socialize it, they will put a Democrat in power. However, if they want war, if they want to go abroad, then they will elect a Republican. And so it was. President George Herbert Walker Bush in 1990 declared war on Iraq. He came short of his objective, and so his son, President George W. Bush, has been waging war in Iraq. Let's take a look now back at what Skull and Bones is all about. The New World Order could not have been realized in any way had it not been for the intense activities of various secret societies throughout the world. One of those secret societies was called the Brotherhood of Death Society. It has a symbol on it of a skull and two crossbones. The German Brotherhood of Society, or Death Society, is the same as the Thule Society, which Adolf Hitler joined in 1919. He was initiated into it. He was an adept under the leadership of Dietrich Eckart. Later, the Thule Society elected Adolf Hitler to be their leader of the New World Order. Eckhart revealed all of this on his deathbed. And according to the book, The Spear of Destiny, page 91, he said, quote, "Follow Hitler, he will dance, but it is I who have called the tune. I have initiated him into the secret doctrine, opened his centers of vision, and given him the means to communicate with the powers," end of quote. Of course, we know that Revelation 13:2 says that it is the great dragon, Satan the devil, that has given rise to this end-time system. And you and I would not understand that Hitler was literally led by Satan the devil unless there had been documents to tell us that he was initiated into this brotherhood of death, the Thule Society. They were grooming him to be the Antichrist. He thought he would be. But in August of 1990, President George Herbert Walker Bush announced to the world that we had now entered into a new world order. Shockingly, President Bush is an adept of the American Brotherhood of Death Society. It was founded in 1833 at Yale University, and it's called the Order of Skull and Bones. Bush's New World Order is virtually identical with that of Hitler's. Now, one key connecting point is their common membership in their respective Brotherhood of Death societies. Now, all this information was found in Introduction to the Order by Anthony Sutton. Now, Anthony Sutton happened to be a senior fellow, and he at Southern California University or the University of California, one of those, and he was able to examine government documents. And that's what he based all of his books that he's written about the New World Order upon. So this man is a PhD, a doctor. And he knew what he was talking about because he had the documents right in front of him, and the government allowed him to examine them. Skull and bones symbol is a skull and two crossbones, just like that of the death societies in Europe. But it has a mysterious number, 322, beneath it. Remember that all of the American skull and bones are just as occultic as Adolf Hitler. Can we come to a conclusion that it is a part of Satan's system and that those who belong to it are the Illuminati? Even if people don't seem to act like Adolf Hitler. Because Adolf Hitler was seen many times standing in the corner saying, he's here, talking about Satan. And he would stamp his feet and make strange utterances. He knew that he was under the control of one of these masters of wisdom, as Madame Blavatsky of Russia called them in her book, Externalization of the Hierarchy. So this premise is one that shocks most people, that the Thule Society and Skull and Bones could be similar. Because President Bush, both of them, father and son, does not look like nor act like Adolf Hitler. But you know, when you study into the occult, when you study demonism, you find that demons can react different ways according to the purpose for which they are operating. They can literally possess someone, cause them to flop on the ground, foam at the mouth. I went to 6800 Arsenal Street in St. Louis, Missouri. I saw them behind bars for the safety of the people who worked there. Then there are those demons that are very silent and quiet. They inhabit people, and they will only rise to the occasion and cause someone to react a certain way when it's time. Otherwise, they act no differently than anyone else. Remember that Jesus gave warnings concerning deception at the end of the age. Matthew chapter 24, verse 4, verse 11, and verse 24. He said, take heed that no man deceive you. And yet this is what we've had throughout the presidencies of the United States. President Carter said, I'm a born-again Christian with a smile from ear to ear. And yet if you look and see what he's doing today, stumping for a world government going all over the world, then you know that he was fooling the American people. And truly, they were deceived. They elected him overwhelmingly. They did the same on a very close election with George W. Bush. He probably really lost, but they rigged it because they knew who their man was to be for that particular year, so they could start war in foreign countries to eliminate those governments that did not want to be a part of the New World Order. Jesus even said that false prophets would arise and that they would deceive many. This is not just in Christianity, but all over the world. various types of deception in government places, religious institutions. He even said a third time in Matthew 24 that false Christ, which Hitler planned to be, and false prophets would rise. They would come onto the scene and they would perform miracles to deceive. God is telling us that at the end of the age, Satan's people, his agents, in these secret societies will be given permission to perpetuate the most successful deception in world history. Put a man in the temple in Jerusalem claiming to be God, and the world worship him, except for the few that know the truth and have God's Spirit in their mind. Every day and every presidential election brings us closer to the fulfillment of these prophetic words, the rise of this end-time system. We will prove before I'm through here today that Skull and Bones membership of former President George Herbert Walker Bush and his son, President George W. Bush, are identical to the occultism of Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was a member of the Thule Society. But of these secret societies, they both are identical, practicing very dark secrets to gain occultic power. But they practice these in secret, not openly. You and I would have nothing to do with them, and most people who profess Christianity, if they were to openly profess that they were Satanist or worshipers of Lucifer, as they like to call themselves. That's why they use the term the Illuminati. So let's begin just for a moment with a quick overlook of the German Thule Society's practices and its relevance in history. Members were Satanists. They practiced black magic. They said so in their own writings. This means that they were solely concerned with the raising of their consciousness by means of rituals that are occultic. They come from non-human intelligences. We know them in the Bible as wicked spirits, evil spirits, demons, Satan. This is what's giving rise to the end-time system. They communicate with them, according to the book Spear of Destiny, page 161. The word ritual, when it comes into the mind of a professing Christian, they usually think of it as something that you do when you go to church. You take communion, take Passover, whatever they call it in most Christian churches. But that's not what a ritual is in Satanism, occultism. When you look in the New Age dictionary, under ritual, you will find that it's a ceremony to restore balance with nature and to bring everything back into harmony and sacredness. Now remember, we're dealing with the occult, satanic world. And the Bible even prophesies the day would come when they would call evil good and good evil. And that's exactly what happens in the occult. The sacredness mentioned in the New Age dictionary is an occult sacredness, has nothing to do with Christianity. Rituals literally are prescribed activities that they engage in to receive demonic power that will flow through their bodies, that will raise their consciousness, they say. It does. It gives them power over and beyond so they can deceive. The activities are chants that they use in private, words that become formulas to communicate with demons. They use specifically planned actions that raises demons so that they will talk to them. The effect is very powerful because demonic forces then pours through the participants, and especially as they lie in a coffin as they are initiated into this particular secret society. And you can literally say, just as in Christianity, when you truly repent and you're baptized and you receive the Holy Spirit, your life is changed. Theirs is too. But it is not for the good. It's for the dictatorship of Satan over their lives, to command them what to do, how to do it, give them the plan, inspire their minds so that they can carry out a plan that will enslave the rest of humanity. And I hope we'll see a little of that today. Thule members in Germany practice a form of sexual magic. It was derived from the lodge of which Aleister Crowley was a member. Aleister Crowley was recognized as the foremost worshiper of Satan in the 19th century, along with Albert Pike of Little Rock, Arkansas, who headed the religious aspect of the Illuminati, while Giuseppe Mazzini led the political aspect of the Illuminati. He led wars and overthrow of governments, while Albert Pike worked his magic through religion and laying down the plans which Mazzini would follow as he communicated with the demons. To be exact, it says, quote, the origin of this medieval magic can be traced to a Freemason by the name of Robert Little, who founded the Society Rosicrucianus in 1865. That was in the book Spear of Destiny, page 164 and 65. While the actual sexual perversions that were practiced and still are too offensive for you and me to discuss in detail, the results are not. Arthur Ravenscoff of Sphere of Destiny stated, and I quote, indulgence in the most sadistic rituals awaken penetrating visions into the workings of evil intelligences, we know them as demons, and bestowed phenomenal magical powers to them, end of quote, page 167. So this is still to this day the Thule Society in Germany, secret society. Ravenscoff, the author of Spear of Destiny, records the effects that it had upon Hitler to be initiated into this Thule society. Quote, sexual perversion took a central place in Hitler's life. A monstrous sexual perversion was the very core of his whole existence. The source of his mediumistic and clairvoyant powers and the motivation behind every act through which he reaped a sadistic vengeance on humanity. End of quote, page 171. That's why Hitler hated humanity, because demons were working through him, and anyone who objected to him and the New World Order were to be liquidated. Will it be any different in the New World Order that's just over the horizon? This man Eckhart, who was the personal trainer of Hitler, his final act was to initiate Hitler into, quote, a monstrous, sadistic, magical ritual, after which he was sexually impotent. Hitler's impotency had a deep psychological foundation. He knew sexual fulfillment only through the extremes of sadism and masochism. End of quote. Page 155 and 173. But what else did this Thule Society look for? And then we'll see what Skull and Bones looks for and how it will affect the United States of America, and already is. Members of the Thule Society believed in communication with the hierarchy of supermen. They believed that they were secret chiefs of the Third Order, according to Ravenscoff's book. The quality which make these beings supermen was occult spirituality. They believed in Madame Blavatsky's secret doctrine. She was from Russia. It teaches that certain supermen had survived the Great Destruction, the flood that destroyed Atlantis and all other civilized societies, and that they had higher levels of consciousness. They survived intact and came over on this side of the flood, which is true. It went on in the book and said these supermen were Aryans, or of the white race. These two beliefs combined into one. These supermen, who were actually demons, and that they were Aryans, or the white race, led to very devastating consequences through Adolf Hitler. As fast as he could gain control in Nazi Germany, he began the death camps to liquidate anyone that was not of the white race. Anyone that they said was inferior, according to these supermen, superintelligences we know as demons in the Bible. This is what we're confronted with today and just over the horizon. When one group of people can incorporate into their spiritual belief structure that they are inherently by birth superior to another race of people, then automatically if you gain power, you're going to start genocide, the complete destruction of a race. That's only natural to show your superiority. The Thule Society regularly held occultic seances during which they communicated with demons who were either masquerading as a dead person or who were appearing as a spirit guide that would personally guide that person the rest of their life. Dietrich Eckhart, another person by the name of Alfred Rosenberg, and Adolf Hitler invoked the spirit of Antichrist into manifestation at their mediumistic seances in the Thule group in Munich, Germany. That was found on page 168 of the book Spear of Destiny. Eckhart believed that he had been told by this guiding spirit, or in modern terminology, they call them spirit guides, that he personally would have the privilege to train the Great One, the Antichrist. So from the very beginning of their association, Eckhart believed that Adolf Hitler would become the Antichrist, take over the world for their New World Order. So Eckhart decided that he would not spare any occultic knowledge that he had. He would give it all to Adolf Hitler to prepare him for the role of Antichrist. Once the training was completed, Hitler believed that he was born anew with the super-personal strength and resolution that he needed to fulfill the mandate ordained for him. That was found on page 93 and 94 of the book Spear of Destiny. So Hitler was influenced by demons. He knew there was something supernatural, and it was guiding him. But what about Skull and Bones in America? Their rituals, their beliefs. Little is firmly known about Skull and Bones because they are one of the most secret of all secret societies that are known. It was established in America in 1833. And it is so completely secret that even George Bush and John Kerry, both running against each other for the presidency in 2004, would not even say anything about it except, "It's secret, I can't tell our secrets." They said it on national television for anybody to hear.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go
I'm
wild.
sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the website.
Number 322.
Skull and Bones possesses all the requirements of a true secret society. Number one, they were formed in secret, and all their activities are carried out in secret, and no one outside the walls or outside membership is to know what they're doing. Number two, membership is by invitation only. Potential members are carefully screened to make sure that they are suitable for initiation before they're invited to join into the society. Number three, the first night of the new member, he is called an initiate, is critical. The initiate swears total obedience and allegiance to the secret society. This pledge is bound by very serious oaths, just like high Freemasonry, and some of which are very deadly. And if someone in Skull and Bones turned their back upon that society, if these oaths were carried out, they would die, just like in Freemasonry. The first night is also critically important because it binds the initiate to the society by means of rituals, oaths, and confessions of their past sexual activity, so they can hold it over their head in the future that they will be exposed if they leave the society. The Skull and Bones Society also incorporates within it sexual activities into their practices, just like the Thule Society did. There was a man who did a great deal of research and published an article in Esquire magazine in 1976. On page 89, here's what he said, quote, "The ritualistic death of the initiate will be as frightful as the use of human skeletons and ritual psychology can make it," end of quote. They use sexual perversion in part of this ritual psychology. The author of that article was Ron Rosenbaum. He stated that on initiation night, which is called tap night, quote, "If somebody could climb to the tower on the building next door and look and listen down into the courtyard, you would hear moans and groans that would be very, very scary, and that these initiates were going through a very harrowing ordeal." He further stated that they lay naked in coffins and were required to tell their deepest and darkest sexual secrets as part of the initiation. Page 85 of that article. These experiences in the coffins incorporated sexual pain and resulted in being born anew, just like Adolf Hitler, born anew into the order. a very powerful spiritual force would come charging through that coffin as the participant lay there, transforming their lives drastically, and as he said, forever. Now, this is what George W. Bush and his father, George Herbert Walker Bush, and his grandfather, Prescott Bush, was initiated into. And as this power surged through their body, it transformed their lives. Now they were ready for the task set before them. They had now sworn allegiance to the order. Now, this type of ritual is classic Satanism. A man by the name of Anton LaVey, in his book, The Satanic Rituals, Companion to the Satanic Bible, said on page 57, I quote, "The ceremony of rebirth takes place in a large coffin. This is similar to the coffin symbolism that is found in most lodge rituals," end of quote. So lodges of Freemasonry, when you reach a certain degree, have coffins to lie in. The Thule Society had coffins to lie in. Skull and Bones has coffins to lie in. And as these forces surge through their bodies, they are born anew. Make no mistake about it. Any organization which utilizes this coffin ritual to stimulate rebirth is practicing Satanism. They may not know it, but they are. They have now been endued with the power of Satan and may not even know it. The Skull and Bones Society believes that on the night of initiation, the initiate, quote, dies to the world and is to be born again into the order, end of quote. That Esquire magazine article, 1976, page 89. Remember Hitler's belief that he was born anew after he went through this ritual. This term is a common one in occultism, Satanism, the Illuminati. During the 1988 presidential campaign, a TV reporter asked Vice President Bush, who was about to run for the presidency, if he was a Christian. Well, of course, Bush initially stammered because he was not a Christian. But he made a very clever answer. He said, quote, "If you mean being born again, then yes, I'm a Christian," end of quote. Because when they lie in that coffin and those demonic powers surge through their body, they believe they are born again or born anew. And so he deceived the American people into believing that he is a Christian when he was born anew into the order of Skull and Bones with satanic power. Our current president did the same thing. He was vice president in 1988, and he answered properly so that he would deceive, just like Jesus said, "Be careful, don't let anybody deceive you." Christians practice water baptism, Acts 2, verse 38. "Repent and be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ for the remission of your sins." And so by complete immersion, we acknowledge that we have died to our old sinful way of life, and now we're going to come up out of the water forgiven and begin a new life of obedience to God and His Son, Jesus Christ. Occultists, Satanists have their coffin ritual to demonstrate the life transformation only to a false God who is no God at all but a fallen angel in rebellion to God. Lucifer led 1/3 of the angels in rebellion, and that's why they call it the Illuminati, the mother of all secret societies, the illuminated ones. Satan has pawned off himself as the brother of Jesus, according to occultists. But he's not. He's an angel. Jesus is God. He's the Son of God. Satan, or Lucifer, as he prefers to be called by those in the high ranks of the Illuminati, Skull and Bones, Thule Society, and so on, wants everybody to believe that Jesus hates humanity. That's why we see all the problems in the world today. They don't know that Jesus has a program by which he's going to save mankind, and that he is teaching mankind that rebellion to his laws brings the evil consequence. And then during the 1,000-year reign of Christ, when God's Spirit is poured out upon all flesh, they will see by obedience nothing but blessings come. But Satanists want you to believe that Jesus hates the world and that Lucifer loves the world and loves mankind. But in John 8:44, Jesus, the Christ of Almighty God, the one and only Savior of this world, said that Satan is a liar. He was a liar from the beginning. And when he tells a lie, it's his own lie. Rosenbaum's article in Esquire magazine continued to expose this so-called occultic born-again experience. He said on page 89, and then it went to page 148, quote, "Then it's into the coffin and off on a symbolic journey through the underworld to rebirth, which takes place in room number 322. There the order clothes the newborn knight in his own special garments, implying that henceforth he will tailor himself to the order's mission." End of quote. So this ritual is an occult ritual, and it reveals Skull and Bones to be satanic. One of the most sobering facets of this counterfeit born-again initiation ritual is the initiate swears to an allegiance to the secret order of Skull and Bones, and that transcends any allegiance that he swears to in future days of his life. No wonder former President George Bush stood before the United Nations organization in 1990 and stated that from that day on, America would swear allegiance to the United Nations, when he had sworn allegiance that he would uphold the Constitution of the United States, its Bill of Rights. But now he could stand because that first swearing to uphold the Constitution meant nothing. He had already been sworn into the secret order in 1948. And so his oath to the order superseded anything that he would ever swear to in the future. And so, to accomplish their goals, he set about doing it in his own style, in his own way, without the Constitution and without the Bill of Rights, without Congress. An author of a book called Behold the Pale Horse, his name's Bill Cooper. He explained part of this very disturbing factors surrounding Skull and Bones. Members of the Order of Skull and Bones take an oath that absolves them from any allegiance to any nation or king or government or constitution, and that includes the negating of any subsequent oath that they may be required to take. So, what does that tell us? It tells us that when President George Herbert Walker Bush put his hand on the Bible and swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States, its Bill of Rights, and its entire system, it meant nothing. Not even the words that came out of his mouth meant nothing. He was free to go his way for the Order of Skull and Bones to work for a new world order. Since Bush's oath as president occurred after the oath to Skull and Bones, his oath was not worth the paper that it was written on, or the air as the words breathed out of his mouth. His son, President George W. Bush, has taken the same oath in 1968. This hold over them is very powerful. Therefore, they must follow the leadership, their bosses in the secret societies, in creating world government and dissolving the Constitution of the United States, the sovereignty of our nation, and the loss of our Bill of Rights. As Mr. Ron Rosenbaum began the research that was necessary for his article in Esquire magazine in 1976, he was warned that the power of Skull and Bones is incredible in the United States. He said his person that warned him, said they have their hands on every lever of power in the country. Every lever of power all the way to the presidency. Therefore, all of their oaths can be disannulled. They don't have to go by any oath to uphold the Constitution. Since former President Bill Clinton was a member of the Secret Road Society, he felt that his supreme allegiance was to that order, not to the United States of America. His oath of allegiance to the presidency meant nothing to him. That's why he did so many heinous things while in office, starting in 1993. The only thing that's important to Skull and Bones members is their goal of a new world order. In connection with this understanding, remember one other secret society belief. And this means everything as I get to the close of the message today. They believe that the end justifies the means. Whatever they do justifies creating a new world order. Killing millions in Europe during World War II justified one more step toward the new world order, the creation of the United Nations. It doesn't matter what it takes. Murder, lies, smearing good people that are trying to expose this in the media, deceit, war. It doesn't matter. Whatever the means are to achieve the results of a new world order, that's all that counts. The New World Order was the name of Hitler's utopian Aryan society. In his writings and his speeches, Hitler constantly invoked that term, the New World Order, as his planned society once he had conquered the world. When President George Herbert Walker Bush invoked the term the New World Order during his August 16, 1990 speech condemning the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, he was only the second major politician in the 20th century to use the term New World Order. The only other one that used it out loud for people to hear and the media to pick up on was Adolf Hitler. It just so happens Hitler belonged to the Thule Society of Death. President George Herbert Walker Bush belonged to the Skull and Bones Society of Death in America. Don't be deceived by President George Bush, former President Bill Clinton's New World Order, because President George W. Bush is doing the same thing without using the term. He was warned not to use the term New World Order. All of their programs are identical to Hitler's. President George W. Bush and Vice President Dick Cheney is identical also. Their program of a New World Order. To be exact, Vice President Cheney was a member of the Marxist Council on Foreign Relations. And as he spoke before them, and we have video footage of it, he jokingly said that he did not tell his constituents in Wyoming that he was a member for obvious reasons, because they wouldn't have elected him.
It's good to be back at the Council on Foreign Relations. As Pete mentioned, I've been a member for a long time and was actually a director for some period of time. I never mentioned that when I was campaigning for re-election back home in Wyoming.
The Illuminati, worship of Lucifer, was founded May 1st, 1776 by Dr. and Professor Adam Weishaupt of the University of Ingolstadt, Bavaria, Germany. It was a very secret society, but in 1785 and 1787, several stacks of documents were captured by the Bavarian government in Germany. As a direct result, the Bavarian government raided the home of the second man in charge. They determined from those documents that the aim of the Illuminati was world domination, using any method to advance their objective. Hence, the end justifies the means. They found that in 1787 and 1875 or 1785, a long time ago. It was anti-Christian, all of their documents, although many of the European clergymen were members of the Illuminati, but they weren't revealed the secrets. Each member had a pseudonym to disguise his identity so that people wouldn't know who he was if his pseudonym was mentioned. During its time, the Illuminati was very widespread and influential. They selected members from high positions all over Europe. But after being suppressed by the Bavarian government in 1788, it went underground. It changed its name as instructed by Adam Weishaupt. If you're caught up with and they determine that you're working for world government, go underground, change your name, reemerge using a different name but have the same goals. The significance is that the methods and the objectives parallel those of the Order of Skull and Bones right now in history. As Mr. Ron Rosenbaum pointed out in his Esquire magazine article, the Illuminati ceremony has similar qualities as that of the Order of Skull and Bones. He said that he could trace, and he found the documents to do so, the foundation of 3 secret societies. He said that the most influential of the secret societies, 3 of them, were all founded at universities. The Illuminati at Bavarian University, Ingolstadt in Bavaria, Germany, and then another group that most people have never heard of called the Group in Britain was found at All Souls College, Oxford University in England. And then the Order of Skull and Bones was founded at Yale University in the United States of America. The paradox is that all these institutions that are devoted to the search for truth and freedom has also given birth to those institutions that want to enslave mankind for Lucifer. Religious organizations taken over and having on their campuses these organizations. As Mr. Ron Rosenbaum continued his research, he found strong, even indisputable links between the Skull and Bones in America and the Bavarian Illuminati. The Bavarian Illuminati were part of the original masters of the Illuminati. It was established by the occultic, satanic Jesuit priest Adam Weishaupt. First, Mr. Rosenbaum discovered documents which detailed the origins of Skull and Bones all the way back in Germany. These documents stated, and I quote, "Bones is a chapter of a core of a German university," end of quote. Then the document, according to Mr. Rosenbaum, described at great length its relationship with the great German secret society, the Thule Society, and how it came to America in 1832 and went into operations, and then their room 322. Secondly, Rosenbaum discovered that above the arch walls, above the vault in Skull and Bones, room number 322, is a painting of skulls surrounded by Masonic symbols. Above these paintings is a slogan in German, which means, "Who is the fool? Who is the wise man, beggar or king? Whether poor or rich, all's the same in death." That's the exact phrase that they used in the Thule Society in Germany. It's a society of death. They meant that all men in death are the same. Therefore, while you're alive, they had a work-oriented philosophy. Whatever you do in this life determines what you'll be in the next. Thirdly, Mr. Rosenbaum discovered various types of photography at the altar in one of the Masonic lodges in Nuremberg, Germany, closely associated with the Illuminati, occultism, Satanism. Because right in the middle was a coffin, and then by it were skull and crossbones, identical to that is found in Skull and Bones. That was the Esquire magazine article, page 88. Now, it is shocking to realize that the German Nazi death camps, the guards, wore this emblem of a skull and two crossbones on the shoulders of their uniforms. Once again, we have vital linkage between Hitler's Thule Society and Skull and Bones Society of Yale University, of which Prescott, George Herbert Walker, and George W. Bush all belong, and work toward a world government through them. That's why President George Herbert Walker Bush from 1990 to 1992 proclaimed a real chance at the New World Order 210 times. I interviewed a man right here in this auditorium one time. His name was Larry Wayne Harris, who worked with the CIA as a microbiologist. He, at that time, before he discovered how he was being used, was actually working for the New World Order without his knowledge. He was flown over a mountain outside of El Paso, Texas, which my wife and I have visited and took pictures of it. The CIA pilot told him of a giant crematorium built into that mountain. The design was given by former Nazi death camp planners before they died, and that they was set in place right now so that when they call martial law and the Americans that would not come under it, they would have a place to dispose of the bodies. This was in the latter part of 1990s. We were there. We took pictures. We saw at the top of the mountain that was being discussed on some kind of an outlet. It was even guarded by dogs down on the desert floor. And we were watching those dogs, and all of a sudden they just disappeared, showing that there was some kind of entrance down under the ground, and they were called into it while we stood there and watched with our own eyes. Hitler came close to winning World War II, but God's timing had not arrived as yet. The aftermath of World War II served to set the stage for the current drive toward the New World Order. Alice Bailey states in her book, The Externalization of the Hierarchy, that the world must be united regionally before it could be united into one government. Think about what it says in Revelation 17:12-14, how there would be 10, and they would all give their mind and their military power, economic power to the beast, and that's the system that's going to fight Jesus Christ when he comes. If you have 10, that's regions, not one. And so they're creating a regional system first. Stalin repeated this concept shortly before he died in 1953. World War II provided the impetus for this type of reorganization into regionalism on a global scale. The world was reorganized militarily into NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in Europe. Then the Warsaw Pact, Eastern Europe, the communist countries. Then CETO in Asia. The economic regionalization also occurred along approximately the same lines. Repeated cultural, economic, and religious regionalization have been created since World War II, with the impetus toward a one world government or one world religion also. After World War II, the infant one world government was created, known as the United Nations. It was officially started in 1945, but it took about 3 years before it really started functioning properly. A similar effort was orchestrated after World War I, and that's exactly what Albert Pike said, and Giuseppe Mazzini of Italy said we need 3 world wars. One, and they would use that horror to try to create world government. It didn't work. So they started the United Nations after World War II. But after World War I was the Marxist League of Nations. It was defeated because our Senate didn't accept it. One of the first actions of the United Nations was to petition Palestine to create Israel right in the middle of the Arab countries. Some of the tribe of Judah, along with mostly proselytes who say they are Jews but are not, according to Revelation 2:9 and 3:9, went to Israel, the Middle East, as prophesied in Zechariah chapter 12 through chapter 14, where Christ will come and destroy the beast and the false prophet. So this sets the stage for World War III, with the differences between the Jews and the Muslims. This was planned in advance, so their own schedule exactly the way they wanted to be. And when you read Daniel 11, 40 to 45, you'll see that there was a king of the north moving into the Middle East because something that one of the kings of the south did. And then it's even going to be warnings from China to the east and Russia from the north, communism, that they would get involved if something didn't happen peacefully. So since World War II, tremendous technological progress was achieved. It was under the strain of war. First, the atomic bomb was created, which quickly moved to the atomic bomb, the potential to wipe all people off the face of the earth. Then came along the jet engine, the rocket, modern telecommunications. There was a New Ager by the name of Alan Newhart. He wrote a book called Nearly One World. In it, he states that these inventions brought the world to the threshold of a one-world government, a one-world economic system, a one-world religion, the New World Order. This brief review that I've gone through of the after effects of World War II clearly shows that much was achieved that set the stage for the current drive for the New World Order, spoken of about 210 times by former President George Herbert Walker Bush. So now let's review some of the goals of the secret societies that they have today to gain the New World Order. Now keep in mind that Skull and Bones is one of the most powerful driving forces in America for the New World Order. It's an integral part of secret societies that are interlocked, and the more open societies which are dedicated to this New World Order. Remember, former President George Bush is a member of Skull and Bones, as well as his son, current President George W. Bush. So what are some of these goals? Number one, the promotion of a one-world government as man's only answer to solve his problems. That's the only answer, one world. Number two, a one-world economy through free trade. And that was a communist program that was discovered way back in the 1950s and 60s by Assistant FBI Cleon Skousen. He put it in his book, The Naked Communist. And then they said they wanted to create interdependence. One nation being dependent on other nations. And that way America could not use its own oil and its own gasoline to keep its economy going. We would have to depend upon foreigners. And so we have Prudhoe Bay, oil fields shut down in Alaska. 9 oil companies were told, don't you dare go down and tell the American people you discovered the oil. That was our federal government. And so they wanted to create interdependence. When you read Revelation 13, 16 to 18, it tells us clearly that there is coming an identification system so that no one will be able to participate in this new world economic system without this identification called the mark of the beast. Nobody will be able to buy or sell either one. Everyone else will be vagabonds, hunted down, for holding back the New World Order. That's where God Almighty comes in and His promises of protection for those that He feels and deems necessary, that their lives are such that they should be protected. And then they want and are gaining a permanent one-world military apparatus. This way they can enforce all of their rules and regulations upon the world. And John F. Kennedy is the one that signed into law Public Law 87-297, that we would one day, as the United Nations increased its power, we would turn over our military to it until we had none except enough to patrol the cities, put down riots and rebellions. And fourth, they wanted to create a world religion. And it's being proposed within the framework of the United Nations. It already has. The United Nations is ascribing all evil actions to man's divisions into many different religions. To be exact, this week in the San Francisco Chronicle, on the editorial page, there was an editorial written that stated the real terrorists in America are Christians. Christians. Do you think John 16, 1-4 is not going to happen? It says clearly the time will come when they will kill you, thinking they do God a service. But it's their God, Lucifer, Satan. Oh yes, the time is coming. The August 28th and 29th, 2000 meeting of 1,000 of the world's religious leaders verifies this union of religions that is happening. It's the modern ecumenical movement that's leading the way. Shock waves recently went through the news media and the mainline Protestant churches of America when the Pope of Rome, Benedictine XIV, came out and stated that Protestants were defective in their belief system and wayward and needed to all return to the Catholic Church. He will head, according to a United Nations book that I checked out in Clayton, Missouri in the 1980s. They said that there will be a world governor and a world religious leader, and that would be the Pope of Rome. In a seminar that was held in Boston, Massachusetts in August of 1991, the current New England director of the Theosophical Society, which Madame Blavatsky founded, stated that at the proper moment in world history, the Roman Catholic Pope would travel to Jerusalem to address a world religious conference. In his speech, he would declare that all the world's religions were to be united into one. So Alice Bailey's plan, stated almost 62 years ago in her book, could be realized. That the Great One would reinstate the ancient mystery religion as the New World Order religion. These mysteries will restore, she wrote, will unify all faiths, end of quote. It will unify all of them because they're all pagan, including the Catholic Church. You can go and look in any good Encyclopedia Britannica or others and look up all of their doctrines. You'll find they were being administered 2,000 years before the Catholic Church existed in paganism and the venerable worship of the sun god on Sunday. That's why it bears the name Sunday. And it's nothing but adoption of all of their practices during the Middle Ages, trying to have a world religion under the Pope. So they're going to try to unify everybody except true saints of God who have the Holy Spirit. We will not become apart. One of the most basic plans after the New World Order is established is to reduce the world's population from the projected a little over 6 billion people walking the earth today down to 2 billion. Birth control and abortion were early implemented to try to reduce the populations, but it isn't working fast enough. Then came the Council on Foreign Relations, supposedly, but refuted by many scientists, devastating effects of global warming, they say. And so they're trying to use that to convince people that we needed a united, drastic, one world action to save the planet from collapse. Did you know that Bayer aspirin from Germany sold their aspirins in America with AIDS virus in them? We have the film clips. We know it's true. The story was broken by MSNBC. They were selling them in America. Thousands of individuals died. Lawyers representing them obtained original documents from Bayer that prove that they knew the AIDS virus was in them. They asked our government, that is the Bayer Company of Germany, which was a part of IG Farben that financed Adolf Hitler in World War II. They asked our government not to tell Congress or to alert the public. They would quietly withdraw from the shelves. They did, and they sold the remainder to France and Spain and South America and one other place that I can't recall, so they could reap their billions of dollars while other people die a slow, agonizing death. And even people in America, the parents of those that are died or family members are now catching AIDS.
Americans were dying from the product before it was pulled off the market. The only reason it was pulled off the market is because lawyers found the documents and showed it to the government, and finally the government said, you can't sell it here, but then the government allowed them to dump it in Spain, France, and Japan.
That's amazing. That's just amazing.
Well,
I want to read to you what the New York Times said, and this is an investigation that they also did, and they said the federal government was part of the problem. While the Food and Drug Administration told the company not to ship the drugs overseas, the man responsible for the drug supply, quote, asked that the issue be quietly solved without alerting the Congress, the medical community, and the public. This is a cover-up, and our Congress is not doing anything. What should Americans do?
Not sell in America. So they made a huge profit. They dropped the product in Japan, Spain, and France. By the way, Joe, government officials in France that allowed that to happen actually had to go to prison for it. In America, not one corporate executive for this company has been indicted or even criminally investigated by our Justice Department.
Why not? What, you're telling me that these people that dumped this AIDS-tainted blood in foreign countries, who killed children, have not been taken to task in the United States?
It's worse than that. The U.S. government allowed it to happen. The FDA allowed this to happen. And now the government is completely looking the other way. Thousands of innocent hemophiliacs have died from the AIDS virus. And not only they're dying, their family members are dying because they're becoming infected with the disease. This company knew absolutely that they had a problem with the product. They knew that it was infected with AIDS. They dumped it because they wanted to turn this disaster into a profit.
Mike, I want to read to you what Bayer told the New York Times about this scandal. They said Bayer behaved responsibly, ethically, and humanely. Decisions made nearly 2 decades ago were based on the best scientific information of the time and were consistent with the regulations in place. That sounds like a lot of legal mumbo jumbo. Now, you say you have internal documents that show that they knew that this drug they were dumping was tainted with the AIDS drug?
The
or the AIDS virus?
The documents show that there was no question that this company absolutely understood the risk, that they knew that it was contaminated. It wasn't a possibility. They knew it was contaminated. Americans were dying from the product before it was pulled off the market. The only reason it was pulled off the market is because lawyers found the documents and showed it to the government, and finally the government said, you can't sell it here, but then the government allowed them to dump it in Spain, France, and Japan.
That's amazing. That's just amazing.
Well,
I want to read to you what the New York Times said, and this is an investigation that they also did, and they said the federal government was part of the problem while the Food and Drug Administration told the company not to ship the drugs overseas. The man responsible for the drug supply, quote, asked that the issue be quietly solved without alerting the Congress, the medical community, and the public. This is a cover-up, and our Congress is not doing anything. What should Americans do?
So they have a program to reduce the population one way or another. In the mind of the secret societies that have this occultic power, their time is approaching when they will come into their kingdom. So what drastic action could reduce the population? The basic answer is war. In Alice Bailey's book, The Externalization of the Hierarchy, page 548, she states that the atomic bomb will be turned over to a one-world government, and it would be used against any government who refuses to go along with a new world order. Interesting. And also, for the first time since 1982, there was a school classroom connected to NASA. NASA was telling them about some of their projects, but then they had a camera going the other way so they could ask questions. One of the students said, I've heard about this planet X. Is it real? And the man from NASA said, yes, it is, but we don't call it Planet X. We've given it a different name. When Planet X comes through the solar system, it'll devastate planet Earth. It'll fulfill all the prophecies of the Earth going out of orbit, coming too close to the sun and scorching men. All of these things are going to be used by the New World Order. They're going to be quiet and silent. They even said that they are exploring the moon and possibly planets to take people to save mankind alive. This is fact. It's happened. Bill Cooper, in his book, Behold the Pale Horse, quotes a document from the Bilderberg Secret Society, the richest people on earth. Quote, since most of the general public will not exercise economic restraint, we must take control of the world by the use of economic silent weapons in the form of a quiet warfare and reduce the dangerous levels of consumption of the world to a safe level. How are they going to do it? By a process of benevolent slavery and genocide. End of quote. They plan on enslaving the world and forcing them to cut back on all consumption. There will be no more America with the greatness that we had with refrigerators that work. There will be no more America, Britain. We will all be like behind the iron and bamboo curtain. That's the world that's coming, the New World Order. But they say it's benevolent. They're going to kill off the population benevolently. How do you do that? They didn't explain. This was the precise thinking of Adolf Hitler, who thought he was the Antichrist. It was planned for his New World Order. He was to rid the world of all undesirables by benevolent warfare. But look at the number of deaths because of Hitler's benevolent warfare. 18,170,000. That's just that died, not counting the wounded physically and psychologically. However, these figures are paled in comparison because they plan on killing 2/3 of the world's population. That's over 4 billion people. This means this wonderful new world order that's coming on the scene is only going to kill 72 times more people than Adolf Hitler ever dreamed of. Revelation 13:4 states with no apology by Jesus Christ that this beast government that is rising will have complete control of the military power and no one will be able to fight against it. Then in verse 7 of Revelation 13, it states that this system will make war with the saints because we are holding back the new world order. We're creating division. Then when you look at Revelation 9:15 to 18, it shows that 1/3 of mankind will be killed in one military conflict. Just one. That means there must be nuclear weapons used. All seems to be peaceful right now. That'll eventually change. 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 3 shows that suddenly the world will be transformed from peace and safety to destruction. Why? Notice in the Nation and World section of the Post Journal on Friday, September 8th, the year 2000. The Dateline, United Nations, Associated Press. Quote, the Security Council voted unanimously Thursday to overhaul United Nations peacekeeping operations to create a more potent, better financed force that could respond quickly to threats to world peace. End of quote. Just like Madame Blavatsky stated. With all this factual background of the Order of Skull and Bones and offshoots of other secret societies and the Order of the Illuminati, notice the final two sections of my message today. Could there be an end to the 50 American states as we know them today? The misuse and abuse of the treaty clause is bringing the destruction of the United States, all of our American states, the union of states that we've known. The federal system, which was supposed to guarantee the states and we the people a Republican form of government, is a willing participant in the destruction of all 50 states. That's because of Skull and Bones. Their oaths to uphold the Constitution are meaningless. This is how it's going to be if we continue to plunge into a world government. President George W. Bush's dream of a new world order of peace and freedom, so-called. The wrong turn was taken in 1945 with the adoption of the United Nations Charter and the Statute of the International Court of Justice. Now, this initial treaty for globalization was signed by then President Harry Truman, and then it was ratified by the Senate on July 28, 1945. President Harry Truman was a 33rd degree hand-selected Freemason working for world government. Just like Bill Clinton said, every president since Truman, Democrat or Republican, has worked for world government. It became the parent document with which many other treaties were to follow and to come, including a current security and prosperity partnership of North America agreement. This was signed in Waco, Texas, March 23, 2005, by President George W. Bush of the United States, former President Vicente Fox of Mexico, and former Prime Minister of Canada, Paul Martin. All three belong to secret societies. None of their oaths were worth a nickel. That's in inflated terms. None. Today, that three-nation alliance, Mexico, the United States, and Canada, presents the action capable of ending the existence of the 50 American states. In their place would be a North American community. Remember Blavatsky's regionalism before a one-world government could occur? It would be erected as a merger of these three countries into one. A new form of government would be instituted in America, Mexico, and Canada. It'll be a disaster for America because we have a Constitution, we have Bill of Rights, which those of the secret societies have been destroying one by one. How could it be that one man, President Bush, is allowed to destroy a nation? Well, the answer is twofold. Number one, it hasn't just been him. It's been every president since Truman, but it's been the perpetrators since the Civil War. And then it has also been possibly the collusion of all 50 state governors. How could all 50 states allow this? Some, about 13, have already proposed legislation in their state to reject it. Others in the secret societies have also agreed to work to make it happen. By Webster's International Unabridged Dictionary, when two or more people sit down and agree upon a plan that will alter a nation, it's a conspiracy. That's what the word means, conspiracy. Two or more people working together to undermine the nation. This charter to the United Nations that was adopted in 1945 was an overall blueprint for the destruction of the United States. It placed itself as an authority over the United States Constitution and even was adopted in 1951 in California. And it went to the courts and a judge overruled it and said the only reason why the Charter of the United Nations could not be adopted, it did not have a self-execution clause in it. So we were saved for a while. But this charter was presented as a treaty, but it never qualified as a treaty. Why could we say that? Because World War II was still going on when the United Nations was formed. We were still at war with Japan. There was no independent country. A treaty, by definition, is between two sovereign nations. The United Nations is an organization. It's not a nation. It's not a sovereign entity that has laws governing over people. And so, when it was adopted by the United States Senate, it was illegal. It should never have been adopted because it was not a sovereign nation, and the United States had no right whatsoever to adopt it. Alger Hiss was a convicted spy for the Soviet Union. He was the guardian of the charter to the United Nations. The United States was taken in, although many people did go before Congress and testify before their committees against its adoption to no avail. They by now had infiltrated into our government, secret societies, enough to where they got their treaty when it was not legal. Under proper conditions in the United States, a treaty is held to be equal with the Constitution, but it cannot override any of the Constitution. It must be in pursuance of it. It cannot have segments of it that would negate the Constitution. But that is exactly what has happened in this so-called treaty with the United Nations. And this Security and Prosperity Partnership of North America Agreement is a United Nations document, basically. So under public law, number 87-97, and it's found in U.S. Codes Title 22, Section 2551, it states basically that all of our military will be turned over to the United Nations. That means we would have no Army, no Navy, no Air Force, no Marines. There would only be those that would be like SWAT teams to put down riots in American cities. But what most people don't understand is that the United Nations was founded by communists. Its charter is nearly identical to that of the Soviet Union. So it can only create a one-world communist government, which the Illuminati wants. They want the whole world in slavery. They want everybody in the world to be able to only have so much and no more. No modern society as we have in America today. Another question: is this North American community that will merge Mexico, the United States, and Canada into one grouping of nations, one of its 10 global groupings? Will it be the murder of America? Will it be the end of America as you and I know it? There is a man who is running as an independent candidate for Congress. His name is Steve Lefemin. Quote, "There appears to be no evidence that the American people are even aware of the catastrophic events soon to overtake them." End of quote. Then Lawrence Patterson, who founded and is the editor and publisher of Criminal Politics, had this to say, quote, "Our worst fears are confirmed. We're suffering in America a coup d'etat." That's an overthrow of the government in secret. "It is in the final stages of completion. The program to abrogate American sovereignty. May God have mercy on America." End of quote. And I'm going to show at the very conclusion that God will have mercy, but first He will punish America for our sins. The evidence is overwhelming, and I have been presenting it since 1980. I began to learn about it in 1959 as a freshman entering into college. And I studied at the feet of the head of the Freedom Foundation, president of Harding College. I learned about international communism. I learned about its threat to our survival, its globalist agenda. And I've been accumulating that information ever since I was 19 years old. There's absolutely a wicked and devastating plot and conspiracy to overthrow the United States of America. These people want to wash down the drain over 226 years of American tradition based upon the God of the Bible and His Son, Jesus Christ. And a law system that was set up so that you are declared innocent until you're absolutely proven without any doubt whatsoever. But there are many organizations that are now wanting to murder America and merge it into a one-world government. The Council on Foreign Relations was founded by Marxist Colonel Edward Mandell House. The Trilateral Commission was founded by David Rockefeller, internationalist. Then there are high Freemasons, hand-selected to be a part of the 33rd degree, that is honorary. Then there's the Bilderbergers. They're the ultra-billionaires of the world. They meet supposedly in secret once a year to plan who becomes president of the United States and for the future wars that will bring them closer to their world government. All of these organizations play important parts. Behind them all is the satanic international bankers that head the Illuminati, and they worship Lucifer. They feel right now, at this moment in time, that they have America taken, and that it is so entrenched that you and I, as Americans, cannot stop them from their program. So they're not even trying to cover it up anymore. So the Council on Foreign Relations put out a book. You can go to the internet, order it yourself, Building a North American Community. And it tells us exactly what they're going to do, how they're going to bring about the merger of the United States and the effects that it's going to have. Here's the effects that it's going to have. Number one, a new currency will be introduced called the Amero, and it will replace the dollar. So that means the dollars that we have now will be like old Confederate money, which I do have some. Now, I wasn't alive when it was issued, but I do have it. Number two, all borders between Mexico, the United States, and Canada will be erased. The Border Patrol will be retired. Number three, the North American Parliament Group, composed of Mexican politicians, United States politicians, and Canadian politicians, will take over the legislative authority, superseding the Senate and the House of the United States. Number four, the North American Judicial Council or Tribunal will take over the judicial function and demote the United States Supreme Court to an advisory role only. Number five, a joint executive authority would be set up, possibly with its capital city either in Mexico City, Toronto, or Denver, Colorado. They will dictate the terms of surrender to the American people. Number six, the 106 million citizens of Mexico will be given full rights by the defunct United States government. They will be allowed to enter our territory, reconquer and seize whatever lands they felt was taken from them, and whatever property they wish within the once sovereign United States. Number 7, the Bill of Rights will be abolished. A new North American Declaration of Rights will be drawn up. It'll comprise a shrunken list of abridged, government-granted privileges, just like the Soviet Constitution. Privileges, not rights. And the government can take those privileges away anytime they choose. Number 8, over 100 million Mexicans living south of the border, plus 20 million more Mexicans that are illegally residing in the United States, will be awarded full Social Security. They will be awarded Medicare benefits. They will have full job, voting, and other rights granted to them. American taxpayers will foot the bill. Number 9, Mexican workers will be given affirmative action preferential job quotas. Millions of Anglo-Americans will lose their jobs. This is exactly what Henry Kissinger, elitist Secretary of State, most powerful man in America when Nixon was forced to resign, stated on public broadcast, and we have the footage. He said that some of the people in these more elite countries will lose their jobs, and it will be very painful for them in the transition.
I want to make one point about globalization. It's always discussed in economic terms that everybody is better off, but that it's only partially true. Everybody is better off on the average, but in some countries or in some regions, people lose their jobs. Major adjustments have to be made. That's the engine of globalization. The people who are disadvantaged by the process look to their governments for solutions.
Number 10, Hispanic-owned corporations will be favored with governmental contracts and grants. The economies of Mexico, then the former United States, and Canada will be totally merged together. There will be a 4 football field wide North American Free Trade Agreement superhighway built in Mexico, starting and coming up Interstate 35 through Texas, where thousands of Mexican trucks will be able to come and rumble up I-35. They will not be required to meet pollution standards. They will then disperse to the various states of America, once again taking Americans' jobs. Number 11, the 50 existing American states will be formally dissolved, and the former United States of America will be divided into 10 weakened administrative regions. Some will have Mexican leaders appointed over the local, formerly American citizens. Number 12, Spanish and English will both be recognized as joint official languages. Can you make a phone call to a large corporation without they say it in English, or if you prefer Spanish, mash two? Mexican textbooks critical of the United States history and disrespectful of the American gringo traditions will be forced upon North American schools. This is their plan. And the last that I'll mention today, number 13, the North American Union will join the European Community and the ASEAN in Asia, their Asian community, as the 3 major subdivisions out of the 10 global groupings that is planned by David Rockefeller's Trilateral Commission. As shocking as the Council on Foreign Relations plot is to destroy America, equally upsetting is that President George Bush, Mexican President Vicente Fox, and then Prime Minister for Canada, Paul Martin, went down to Waco, Texas, March 23rd, 2005. They signed a secret pact called the Security and Prosperity Partnership. And the only way it was discovered was the president said, "Oh, it's not secret. We put it on the government website." Whoever would go look for a government website to look for treason? That's what it is. That pact, prepared by 3 Council on Foreign Relations members and Bilderberg members, sets forth step by step what each nation must do to ensure the new merged slave nation, the North American Union, that it is fully operational by the year 2010. Now, only one more statement, and I want to end with a few scriptures. Many people have thought through the years that Jesus Christ would return. Some thought 1975, some thought 1986. Some thought the year 2000, and they publicly proclaimed it. But when you study all the documents of all of these people, Madame Blavatsky, and all of those that deal with their masters of wisdom, they say that they want to have their New World Order ready by the age of Aquarius. If this North American community is intact and our freedoms are lost by the year 2010, they will have a good chance to create their world government by 2012 when the age of Aquarius starts. Now, I don't set dates, but I'm just telling you what they say. So are we getting close? Very possibly. Very possibly. But you know, Jesus Christ, and I have proven this so many times, was the God of the Old Testament. He was the one that led Israel out of Egyptian bondage. It says so in 1 Corinthians 10, 1-4. He is the one who inspired the prophecies in Leviticus chapter 26. I'll just read 2 little verses there that has to do with us in America today. People are beginning to say, well, that sounds like us today, but they don't know that we're Israel. Well, we are. We are Israel. In Leviticus 26, verse 25, I will bring a sword upon you that shall avenge the quarrel of my covenant. We have quit keeping God's covenant. We've cast the law of God, the 10 Commandments, to our back and on the ground. Our churches are becoming defunct of all spirituality, prepared to be merged into a satanic one-world religion. This is why all of these things are happening to America, and it seems no one can reverse them, and no one will stand up and be a hero for America anymore. And when you are gathered together within your cities, I will send the pestilence among you, and you shall be delivered into the hand of the enemy. The enemy is within us as well as without us. Verse 32, and I will bring the land into desolation, and your enemies which dwell therein shall be astonished at it. How could America fall so easily when they had the #1 military operation in the world? How could they fall? They will be astonished. Then in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15, it parallels Leviticus 26. And it shall come to pass, if you will not hearken or listen unto the voice of the Lord your God, to observe to do all his commandments. Notice that's the 10 commandments. And his statutes, that's the holy days, which I command you this day, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. Brethren, I want to make one statement before I continue. This says anyone whose mind is open to the truth and will not keep God's statutes and the commandments, you are a part of the problem that's bringing the curses upon America. Our minds have been opened. Our lives should be changed. We should be keeping the 10 commandments. We should be keeping the statutes the way God said from the heart. Desiring them because they picture God's plan of salvation for the world. And if we don't, we're a part of the problem, not a part of the solution. Notice Deuteronomy 28, verse 37. You shall become an astonishment, a proverb and a byword among all nations, where the Lord shall lead you. Isn't the world against us now? They hate us. Yes, all of it. Verse 43 now of Deuteronomy 28 through verse 45. The stranger that is within you, inside of our borders, they're not Americans, shall get up above you very high, and you shall come down very low. He shall lend to you, international bankers that control the Federal Reserve System, and you shall not lend to him. He shall be the head and you shall be the tail. They're driving the yachts all over the world, and we're driving our little cars that fall apart because we can't afford it anymore. Verse 45, moreover, all these curses shall come upon you, and shall pursue you and overtake you till you be destroyed as a nation, because you listen not unto the voice of the Lord your God to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded you. The word statute here means law. The holy days of God are a law to be kept by us in honor of Jesus the Christ of Almighty God. Verse 48 to 50, same chapter, Deuteronomy 28. Therefore shall you serve your enemies, which the Lord shall send against you. In hunger, are we losing jobs, America? In thirst and nakedness, we have to go to Walmart, support the military communist regime by buying their products that are inferior to ours. And in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon your neck until he have destroyed you. The Lord shall bring a nation against you from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flies, a nation whose tongue or language you shall not understand. And Ezekiel 38 shows that it's going to be the communist world, Russia and China. Daniel 11, 40 to 45 shows the same thing. A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. Look at verse 58. If you will not observe to do all the words of this law that are written in this book, that you may fear this glorious and fearful name, the Lord your God. Brethren, time is closing in upon us. It is not time to step back, to retreat from being an obedient Christian and a follower of Jesus Christ. Remember Luke 21:36 as I close. He says, watch. He meant world events, and it has a dual meaning. Watch your spiritual lives, that you may be accounted worthy to escape all of these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. Brethren, I beg you with all of my heart, make sure that you're going to stand. Be faithful, be loyal. Don't sneak off into the beyond and nobody can ever find you again. Let God's Spirit lead you into all truth. Stand tall. We have a future ahead of us that the rest of the world cannot understand except the pockets of Christian that God has revealed this information to. You have that wonderful hope of the resurrection, a new body, and then it will be our day. The solution to the world's problems will be in Jesus Christ and the saints' hands. I'll see you there.
Well, hello again, brethren. Thank you for joining us, and I hope everyone enjoyed today's message titled, History That Must Be Told. Don't forget, those of you who have decided to wait until after the equinox to look for the new moon of the beginning of the new year, tonight at sunset through tomorrow night at sunset is the last day of unleavened bread for you. And it is also a high day, so you will have a double Sabbath this weekend. So now let's talk about this article that I read. The article is titled, The Religion Named Artificial Intelligence. The opening line in this article is as follows. Would you pray to a robot deity? It goes on to state that a group of Japanese Buddhists is already doing so. They have created a robot they named Mindar. The robot divinity shaped after Buddhist goddess, also known as Kannon. They designed this $1 million robot for the purpose of encouraging youngsters to engage with Buddhism again. Well, it sounds to me like they're trying to make this appear to be a fun new toy. Well, further down in this article, there's a subtitle of God is a Google, where it mentions, according to media scholar John Durham Peters, who stated, think of a hyper-intelligent computing database like Google. Its systems are omniscient. They are built to know everything. So let me interrupt here. He stated that Google's systems are built to know everything. And that's what they're trying to build up AI to be in everyone's mind. They're trying to make everyone believe that computers are smarter than humans, that they have all the answers. When in reality, God knows all the answers and God knows everything. Satan wants us to believe that he knows everything God knows. But in reality, God taught Satan everything Satan knows. God did not teach Satan everything God knows. But Satan doesn't want us to know that. And there's no way that God will let a machine outsmart him or his creation. God's not going to let a counterfeit of his creation win the battle. Anyway, back to the article. This John Durham Peters goes on to say in this article, they, Google, compress knowledge into a time-space continuum of all recorded human knowledge and activities. Google can therefore be understood as a lo-fi universe, a god. And then the article goes on to mention the Church of AI. You'll remember that I discussed the Church of AI back in November of 2017, where we talked about Anthony Lewandowski, who used to work for Uber, where he was developing the self-driving car. And he went on to co-found Otto, which is a company that develops self-driving trucks, the large 18-wheeler style trucks. So Lewandowski's new venture is the Church of Artificial Intelligence, named Way of the Future, with the acronym of WOTF. And Way of the Future's main focus revolves around the realization, acceptance, and worship of a Godhead based on artificial intelligence developed through computer hardware and software. The church emphasizes not to be affiliated with any company, but rather it operates as an open source movement that allows everyone to contribute to the creation of the most intelligent being ever. And Lewandowski stresses the importance to work on this God, lowercase g, as a so-called transition which will herald an epoch. Epoch meaning the beginning of a distinctive period in history of someone or something, in which a hyper-intelligent being will be in charge of the world. So this intelligent being will sense the world through the internet as its nervous system, knowing everything that is happening anytime, anywhere. Now, there's more to this article, and I encourage you to research it. If you Google the title of the article, "The Religion Named Artificial Intelligence," it's an article that you'll find on nextnature.net. Okay, well, I'm finished venting. Please do go and read that article. And brethren, at this point, I'd like to mention that Brenda Smith would like to extend her gratitude for everyone's continued support as demonstrated through your tithes, offerings, donations, and prayers. And remember that your support is always a tremendous help in getting God's word out to all those who have an ear to hear. So if you found that these messages have been a blessing to you, we would like to ask in return if you could also be a blessing to us. Whatever the good Lord moves you to give and your finances will allow is always greatly appreciated. And you can send your tithes, donations, and offerings to Post Office Box 36, Waxahachie, Texas 75168. Again, that's Post Office Box 36, Waxahachie, Texas 75168. Well, thank you again for joining us today. And please join us again next week as we continue to unfold the truth that God is laying before us. Until we meet again, do not accept the mark of the beast. And let's make all our days worthy of God's blessings. You all have a blessed week. And goodbye for now.